left side of the bracket has been determined as KC has taken out Silvername by a score of 3-1. Coming up next, we've got hunterace, the reigning world champion from the 2019 Taiwan Championships, going up against Jarla from Norway. Jarla and hunterace, both friends. Jarla, an HGG champion from Czech Republic, also on Team Nordavind along with NTR and Zorkthar, I believe. Right? Zorkthar might be just from Norway in general. Either way, hunterace, I think a lot of people don't really need an introduction to this kid, but in case you haven't heard, he is seriously good at Hearthstone. But this one probably is a harder series for several reasons.
Yeah, hunterace is the reigning world champion. These players are, as you mentioned, friends, teammates, and also both of them have experience competing. Hunterace on the World Championship stage, Jarla on the BlizzCon stage as a member of the Czech Republic Hearthstone Global Games team that ended up winning the Global Games not too long ago. So two very seasoned players and two of the players who have been the most consistent in the European region throughout 2 seasons of play.
That's right, and I want to see how hunterace is going to handle this mirror matchup in terms of the lineups. It's no surprise that teammates and friends also have brought similar decks. The one notion that I have written here as a difference is Quest Shaman versus Evolve Shaman, but we'll get more into that later because for now we're going to start things off with an OTK Paladin mirror, which is quite unusual. Given that you don't really see Holy Wrath Paladin being started off in a series very often. What do you think is the first queue here, or the reason behind both of them queuing the Holy Wrath Paladin first, Neymar?
I think we are immediately seeing the impact of the difference between the best of 3 versus the best of 5. Holy Wrath Paladin isn't a deck that you would normally start with in best of 3 because depending on the way the picks, the bans, and who wins the first game goes, it's a deck you might not want to queue at all over the course of a series. But in a best of 5, unless it gets banned, you will be playing it at some point. So both players know that they're going to have to toss it out there, maybe felt that this was their best chance to find an edge with it over the course of the match, and so here we are.
Sure. With Druids, I believe, being banned probably makes the OTK Paladin a lot more of an appetizing pick. I know that the players, especially people like hunterace, big fans of the deck, really willing to put in the time and learn it. I think Holy Wrath Paladin was the deck I saw hunterace grinding the most in the past 3 months. Every event I went to, whether it was Las Vegas or Seoul, he was constantly playing this deck, thinking that it was the deck to learn.
Yeah, and he was the first player to introduce the public to the new OTK setup that you can accomplish with this deck with the Holy Wrathing for 25, and then you have the Zephyrus alongside that to find a Soulfire. So the Holy Wrath costs 5 mana, the Banker costs 2, and then you have 3 left. Zephyrus costs 2 and Soulfire costs 1 to accomplish that higher damage potential out of the deck. He mentioned that in a winner's interview, I believe just a week after Zephyrus was first introduced to the deck list. You can get an idea of how quickly he iterates with these deck lists and finds creative ways to make the most out of them.
Do you like to play with fire?
Job done.
And it's going to be small chip damage here and there that hunterace is trying to squeeze in order to climb back from this deficit. This early lead from Jarla because he had Crystology is not something to be taken lightly. Being so much deeper into the card draw ends up making hunterace be in a worse position where he might have to pull the trigger early. In this matchup dynamic specifically, there becomes a timeout Cold War, a game of chicken. Whoever pulls a timeout first tends to be in a losing spot. Largely because if you start doing timeouts, your opponent will be the one who's immune last, and therefore you won't be able to do anything against them, and they'll be able to combo you. So it's largely accepted that you don't want to play the timeouts, but if you do play the timeouts, you would play it before the game has been determined entirely. Like if there's 5 cards left in both players' decks, because then the timeouts won't be the one determining who has the inevitability factor. If it starts hitting the fatigue point, where you will take damage at the beginning of your turn because there's no cards in your deck, and you're starting to use timeouts first before your opponent, it's usually like 100% guaranteed loss.
Yes, and so to avoid that 100% guaranteed loss, what will often happen in this matchup is that we will see the player who falls behind in card draw end up taking a risk with a non-guaranteed Holy Wrath, knowing that if the game plays out and both players are forced to expend their timeouts when it is convenient for them, that you will lose in that scenario if you fall behind on card draw. So you might see the player who ends up falling behind rip the first Holy Wrath when there are 4 or 5 cards left in the deck to try and get the damage in before the timeouts start coming into play.
Yeah, and taking a look at hunterace's deck list here, with that Emperor Thorsan, he did end up keeping his deck list pretty lean, but still very standard across the board, looking for any form of card draw. Did not pick up a Prismatic Lens or Hammer of Wrath or anything like that. Jarla and hunterace playing pretty much the same exact deck list here. I don't see any difference.
It is exactly identical. Curious if they perhaps collaborated on the deck list at all, as it did make a slight change due to the introduction of the Doom in the Tomb recent patch.
Yeah, I mean, Jarla and hunterace are playing different Shaman decks. That's the only difference I see in their lineups entirely.
Yes.
Even their decks that they brought that were similar seems to be 30 for 30. Now, Jarla does have card draw source, but I think he's also still entertaining the idea of answering things like the Pyromancer early. Instead of playing like Acolyte and say, you know what, I'm just going to draw cards, and if I overdraw, so be it. Does have the opportunity of playing Choose Over Champion and setting it up, but Choose Over Champion, not sure why I'm tripping over that word, does have the added benefit in the late game of just being additional burst. You can equip it as a weapon and then try and hit your opponent with that 25 Holy Wrath right after.
And notably, both of these players only have 1 copy of True Silver Champion in their deck. If Jarla chooses to swing that first charge of the True Silver Champion at this Wild Pyromancer now, it means that he is obligated to hold on to that second charge for the rest of the entire game without swinging it to make sure that he has that 30 damage potential available to him way down the line. So I like this. I like holding on to the True Silver Champion when he has other options here with this Elven Archer to clear off the Pyromancer with less valuable resources.
Yeah, this is a completely different approach on both sides, right? It feels like, on paper, both players would rather care about their card draw and kind of just start this, well, do you have card draw? And if not, then I'm just going to climb further ahead. And it seems like they're both favoring their early game positioning so much. And hunterace is not even thinking about necessarily pulling the Prismatic Lens instantly. He's considering also the equality to shut down this Acolyte to only draw 1 card.
I wonder.
Yeah, he sure is. Acolyte is a valuable resource to fight for the board in this matchup because, as you mentioned, the card draw is so vital on both of the sides of these players. And so if hunterace's play this turn were to, for example, develop Novice Engineers or Blood Mage Thalnos to try and continue his card draw, it would play directly into Jarla's Acolyte. So instead, hunterace wants to make sure that Acolyte is off the board, mitigate the card draw from that card to enable his without having it create a consequence for him.
Yeah, the only thing is that I know hunterace, he has Emperor Thorsan in hand, and he had Prismatic Lens to help pull things out of his deck. Chances are he wouldn't be able to have a domino effect. Prismatic Lens draws cheap card draw with cheap spells. You discount them further, so like Novice Engineer and now Flash of Light cost 1, and all those things help dig deeper. So it wasn't a decision that was easy to make for hunterace, but he says, I am behind the card draw, and one way that I can catch up is if my card draw gets a little bit more value. And right now he is down what looks like to be 4 cards, but it's actually just 3 because of the way going first and second dynamic plays out. It's going to get a little bit deeper, too. Jarla has 4 sources of card draw that he can pick from this turn.
And frankly, equality is an almost meaningless resource in this matchup. The only cost it had to hunterace was the, I will use the word tempo with which he draws his cards. Typically, we refer to tempo in Hearthstone as the ability to fight over the board, to turn your minions into damage. But in this matchup, as in a lot of combo matchups, tempo often means your ability to cycle through your deck without having to fret about hand size issues or slow down to react to what your opponent is doing.
Yes, and hand size issues is exactly what Jarla is somewhat running into. Without hand size being a factor, this looks like a very clean Blood Mage Thanos and Hammer of Wrath turn to me. But that does still keep you
like my invention.
at 10 cards. Hammer Wrath will cycle, and then Blood Mage Thanos, if he kills it, draws an extra card. So Jarla dumping his hand freeing up that space.
A good spot here from Jarla. He certainly could have gone with the Hammer of Wrath play that you outlined, but as I was just referring to, this to me is a stronger play for draw tempo. He got the Shrink Ray out of his hand while continuing to accelerate through his deck by developing the Blood Mage Thalnos' turn instead.
Yeah, and something really important just happened right now, which is hunterace drew the Shirvala.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times people really don't account for Shirvala for switching mana cost with something really important, you know, and there are ways that you can just instantly lose a resource because you had Shirvala turn like timeout or anything else equivalently equally important to a 25 mana cost card. So him waiting a turn before all this draw ends up being perhaps a blessing in disguise, despite the fact that it's a suboptimal Emperor Thor's hand, to say the least.
And on the similar note to that, Jarla also just recently picked up his Shirvala. He still had the risk of flipping a Shirvala with a Holy Wrath into 25 mana off of his. Hello.
Yeah. hunterace with a Holy Wrath here, trying to get his Shirvala discount, but also the one Holy Wrath isn't necessary. And that's interesting to me because we have seen some people go for a 2 Holy Wrath continuation play. If there's one card in the deck, you can often shuffle Shirvala and then double Holy Wrath. Right? His Baleful Banker would cost 2. His 2 Holy Wraths were 4, so you could play Shirvala and then with 1 card remaining, surprise his opponent. However, good Paladin players will, of course, be anticipating that. So it's not actually as simple as you might assume. And I think with hunterace, again, trying to make up for that card draw deficit, really finding ways to squeeze in mana efficiency. Christology, big pickup for hunterace.
This is a good point I've heard Sottle make when casting these matches with Holy Wrath Paladin, is that even though you might fall behind in card draw as a Paladin in the Paladin mirror, there always at some point over the course of the game reaches a point where both players get stuck, whether it's early or whether it's in the mid-game or toward the later game. There's a critical mass of card draw in both of these decks, so even if you're slower, that means that you are more likely to catch up as your card draw is remaining left in the deck. So yes, we do see hunterace start to snowball a little bit with card draw effects, begetting more card draw effects, and we're getting the wheels turning. As you can see, both players now at 11 cards remaining in their deck.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if hunterace wants to dump other cards, because he's clearly trying to deny this Blood Mage Thalnos from being able to get that card draw. And if he wants to free up his hand space, it would mean subduing the 1/1. Playing his own Blood Mage also gets that card draw too, so at least he's like staying even with Jarla. Jarla has a lot of draw with that Prismatic Lens pickup. He's currently at 8 cards, so I'm not sure if that's correct. I think that should be 9 cards.
Yeah, that is 9 cards in Jarla's hand.
For some reason, our overlay was saying 8. So if he does play Prismatic Lens, he would be effectively overdrawing with the Blood Mage Thalnos trade. Shirvala's in hand, so it doesn't seem like the swap could be super painful. And I think right now, Jarla's best pickup with this Prismatic Lens would be Emperor Thor's hand.
I wonder.
Critically, if you're unfamiliar with how the interaction works, Prismatic Lens draws the minion first and then the spell. If the order were the other way around, Jarla would still be free to play this Prismatic Lens, as the cards remaining that he's interested in are the Holy Wrath and the timeouts. And he doesn't really care. He would happily remove.
He's going to go for the Cabal Shadow Priest here. He is.
He is.
Let me change your mind.
That's an interesting play. I was not considering that, given that Jarla wants to stay ahead of the card draw war. Very interesting indeed. I wonder if Zephyrus here could be manipulated to give hunterace Mass Dispel. And in a way, they trade resources, so to speak.
Jarla is risking an overdraw here. If both of these Blood Mage Thalnos are cleared from the board, he will overdraw 1 card at the beginning of his next turn, and he critically is still missing timeouts and Holy Wraths. A Holy Wrath. Right.
Well, I mean, hunterace has his own Zephyrus right now. So this Subdue costs 2, and Zephyrus with 6 mana remaining will offer a Ball Shadow Priest, but I wonder what else it'll offer. Oh, Dread Infernal, of course. That makes sense. So many 1 health minions on the board.
Let me change your mind.
All right, so they trade Blood Mage Thalnos. Swapping legendaries, new reality TV show coming this fall.
And that to me feels more like a win for Jarla, as hunterace has already cycled one of his Holy Wraths. The Zephyrus unlocked OTK for potential for hunterace, which is more necessary for him in this position now that he has cycled a Holy Wrath, more so than it is necessary for Jarla from this point. So if I'm Jarla, I am happy with the way that sequence of turns just went, and based on the head shaking I'm seeing out of hunterace, I'm guessing he agrees.
Well, players just head shake. That's what they do.
Of course.
Prismatic Lens, not too much it can have to punish Jarla, although his Baleful Bakers are really expensive. Emperor Thorsan is going to be really important to ensure that Jarla can have a nice combo route.
So with the help of Thorsan, the bankers will cost 4 and 3 respectively. 7 total mana, and the Holy Wrath will be discounted to 4, which would be 11 mana. So this takes away the opportunity for Jarla to go Shirvala, Banker, Holy Wrath, even if he discounts all 3 of those cards in his hand. That is no longer an option for him.
hunterace can capitalize immediately off that Acolyte advantage. Elven Archer shooting the Acolyte. Gets at least 2 card draw, which should hypothetically make up that small difference. Prismatic Lens. And a flash of light. hunterace is going to be decking out soon.
Card draw begets card draw, Dan.
So one thing that's interesting is hunterace with only 1 Holy Wrath can actually Flash of Light, Shirvala, and Baleful Banker immediately to get board presence here. It seems like instead he's going to favor the Crystalsmith Kangor to have a little bit extra board that's resilient. But you know what? He's considering hand space, given that there's a Pyromancer on board.
He is considering hand space. He already has the Shirvala, the Holy Wrath. Of course, he used the 2nd Holy Wrath, and both of the bankers are in his hand. So for the most part, he isn't too concerned about overdrawing cards here. The one kicker is I believe he would like that True Silver Champion that is still in his deck to help him set up lethal potential.
Yeah. And now we're at that critical territory where timeouts almost become irrelevant. So if Jarla is anticipating hunterace to go for a sneaky lethal, right? Because he did see 2 cards discounted in the left side of the hand with Emperor Thorsan. If it's like Baleful, and he also played Prismatic Lens. If Baleful Banker got discounted, if Holy Wrath got discounted, and all these different combos and possibilities, has to be mindful of it. hunterace only drawing 1.
We see this quite often at the highest level of competition. Jarla could have traded in his Crystalsmith Kangor into the Acolyte, let hunterace draw an additional card. hunterace then would have overdrawn 1 card, but Jarla is giving hunterace the benefit of the doubt, the caliber of the player that he is, that he will not have put himself in a position to overdraw a critical resource like the Shirvala, and therefore it would have actively helped hunterace to accelerate through his deck by overdrawing him a card if Jarla were to have made that trade. So there's some mind games going on here.
Yeah, and Jarla also is slightly ahead in the fatigue scenario too now, right? Where if hunterace is going to take his first tick of damage, Jarla would have the 30 with the True Silver and the Shirvala for 25, because the fatigue will take the 30th point of damage. And so hunterace might have to set things into motion and start challenging Jarla. Ops Engineer.
Must move quickly.
So hunterace can deck out.
I'm almost out of cards.
True Silver champion to challenge.
By swinging the True Silver here, hunterace does set up the lethal in the following turn.
Yep, and no hero power to avoid any Shrivala rush to pull himself out of range. Jarla, in a do-or-die scenario right now, does have an opportunity to go for a Shrivala Holy Wrath, but it's a 1 out of 3, and because of those Baleful Bankers being too expensive, he can't increase his chances. If you choose to play a timeout, then he's in the exact scenario that we described, where he will be taking fatigue damage tick the moment he runs out of timeouts. And with his True Silver healing him to 28, he does not have the ability to heal. And because hunterace didn't hero power, he doesn't have Shrivala to put himself to 30.
Let me think.
Looking like Jarla might have to go for this. A 1 in 3, 33% chance to get the victory. Unless I'm missing something.
I'm trying to come up with a way where his odds get better than 1 in 3 to win this game if he chooses to timeout instead. And I'm not seeing it. Jarla agrees. This is the game.
Yep. 1 out of 3 times. Jarla gets the victory. Does not. Flash of light instead. And with that, hunterace gets the victory. That very crucial extra draw on the Acolyte, being able to chain things, but also even timing out and budgeting his resources perfectly. hunterace gets the win. And what looked like to have Jarla in the driver's seat early ends up being a hunterace finish line crossing. So well done by hunterace. It was a very tough matchup, it looked like.
Important win for hunterace. Paladin definitely isn't. When you look at these two lineups, the Holy Wrath Paladin isn't considered one of the stronger decks in the lineup. You expect your decks like your Priest and your Shaman to pick up wins. The Holy Wrath Paladin has a little bit more of a question mark over its head, so that's crucial to get one of your weaker decks out of the way early. That's a significant advantage for hunteraces. Some wins are worth more than others.
Yeah, absolutely. In Conquest, where it often becomes your weakest deck in terms of what's able to be getting through. Now, the weakest deck, you could debate any one of these 3, but you know, one of the hardest things about it is that if Jarla ends up losing another one, reverse sweeps are sometimes very common in Conquest, but when it feels like a well-balanced lineup like this, it's going to be pretty tricky, considering that Jarla still has that Quest Shaman. And Quest Shaman is a deck that I still have a question mark over my head, right? Like, is it the Evolved Shaman? Is it the Quest Shaman? And, you know, Jarla even separate from the pack a little bit by still playing former champs when people have been moving on from the former champ.
On the plus side, one of the Quest Shaman's bad matchups is that Holy Wrath Paladin. That one is no longer in play for hunterace, but I agree with the fact that there are question marks over this Quest Shaman here. For me personally, I have favored the Evolved Shaman that is without the quest. I think that could be the big difference now that we are in best of 5 here. You do not have the ability to hide any of your decks anymore like you did in best of 3 Shield Phase Conquest. I think the raw power level of the questless Evolved Shaman is what could come in handy here and give hunterace an edge with the rest of this series.
Well, he already has that edge with that Game 1 victory. Let's go to Shaman versus Paladin. I think that the difference maker in the series is actually this matchup, assuming it's not the Shaman mirror. So I think it's either the Token Shaman versus the Quest Shaman, or it's the Token and Evolved Shaman versus Holy Wrath Paladin. Those are the slight edges hunterace gains. And by winning that Paladin mirror has now put it firmly in his favor, I feel like, because I think Quest Shaman does a lot worse than Token Shaman against combo decks like this.
Completely agree, and it looks like it is going to be the Paladin again out of Jarla. The questless Evolved Shaman that I have been advocating for, I still do not think is favored against the Holy Wrath Paladin deck, but the Quest Shaman is very unfavored. We have an ample data size to back that up based on how Season 2 of Grandmasters went. It's about a 60-40 in favor of the Paladin against the Quest Shaman. I find this matchup to be much closer to 50-50. I would still give a marginal advantage to the Paladin, but the Shaman benefits significantly specifically from the Soul of the Murlocs. It allows the Shaman player to stick a board more consistently than the Quest Shaman has. And then once that board is stuck, it is highly relevant because there are 2 copies of Bloodlust in hunterace's Shaman deck, allowing him to close the game far more rapidly than the Quest Shaman does. Evolve we see picked up from hunterace, and that is a critical resource as well to turn measly boards from the Shaman side, random totems and 1/1s into relevant minions that demand answers out of the Paladin.
Yeah. Leaving sidekick while you're at it. Flash of Light. Giving Jarla some early game card draw. Not having early game card draw is partially what makes this very scary, right? Because it could be a dicey scenario where your opponent is building something and you're basically Quest Druid, which is like not spending your mana early. And then you're just stuck on the removal, and if you have the right removal for the right situation, good. If you don't, you're out of luck. hunterace has the ability to evolve this into the Mogu Flesh Shaper mutate, or it could just hold on to it and maybe have the ability to draw Desert Hair. I feel like holding the evolved improves the draw quality a lot, so I like the restraint. And this looks like it could be a turn 4 pressure victory here for hunterace. If this Mogu Flesh Shaper turns into Ragnaros, you know, Jarla is in big trouble. So this Prismatic Lens needs to pick up that crucial removal, because Shrink Ray comes out very late.
Yeah, Shrink Ray is very bad in this matchup. Shaman's minions are already often close to 1/1s to begin with. The only real answer that it does effectively is turning minions like the 8-drops created by Mogu Flesh Shaper into mutate back into 1/1s, but it doesn't remove those minions. And if you leave high mana cost minions on the Shaman's boards, they will often simply evolve them again.
Yeah. hunterace picks up Batterhead. Batterhead is a 3/12 minion that after it kills a minion,
I hope you like my
it can
invention.
attack again. Which, in a very interesting way, is pretty effective to Jarla's board, because he gets to clear it and then go face.
The 1/1s that stick around on Paladin's board are pesky, because they threaten to trade into your larger minions with the help of Inequality or with a Shrink Ray that I mentioned earlier. So having the ability to simply clear them off the board just to make sure that they don't present that threat, while also still pushing face. Batterhead can trade into these small minions, and then even though it has Rush, it can still attack face after the first turn it's on the board.
Exactly. So Jarla contemplating if he wants to subdue preemptively, just to buy a little bit of health, and then Shrink Ray after his opponent develops. But I think he's willing to accept the 3 damage from Batterhead. Not the end of the world. It's just that he also has to be mindful of what can hunterace do with 3, 5, 6, 7 plus a Bloodlust would be 12, so 19 damage off of Bloodlust. Unlikely that hunterace wins the game right here. So now in hunterace's spot, how far do you want to extend? You know about the threat of Shrink Ray, but every turn from turn 5 onwards is a threat checkpoint for Jarla, right? He can Shrink Ray on 5, he can Pyro Quality on 6, and so on and so forth.
So if I'm hunterace here, we trade over these 2 Novice Engineers with our Batterhead. We then push 7 damage, which puts Jarla down to 16. Already that means we are threatening Bloodlust lethals. So say we simply throw just a totem onto this board and then pass. That means that we have 2 Bloodlust draws for lethal, as well as this Vicina, which is in our deck list on hunterace's side. If he Lightning Bolts the face the next turn and unlocks Overload, gives all of his minions +2 attack, that also sets up a lethal threat. So it is important to pace your threats in this matchup. hunterace may be deciding this is the moment he wants to pick his spots, because
it is also threatening, I believe follow bleed.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. hunterace not trading into any minion. Leaving the minions on board, so that way if Shrink Ray came out, I guess Flesh Shaper is still a possibility for coming out cheap.
And crucially, Shrink Ray and Equality do not threaten his big minions right now, because he has 2 taunt minions in the way to prevent those Novice Engineers from clearing his Batterhead or his Sea Giants. So in this particular board state, that actually isn't relevant.
Yeah, I guess the thing is that Sea Giant can't evolve, so putting it, shrinking it down to a 1/1 is effectively nullifying it.
Yes.
But for Batterhead, it's not. I do find it interesting that it looked pretty juicy for the Batterhead to trade into the Novice Engineers. But by keeping the board space big, makes it trickier for Jarla to have to handle the Mogu Flesh Shaper.
Well played.
Jarla anticipating the Bloodlust. He's like, all right, think you got me. But he doesn't have it. There's no way to draw into it. There's no 4-mana spell. There's not even a 3-mana spell in this deck. The Spear of the Frog could do something good here, which is it does allow hunterace with that Lightning Bolt to draw Soul of the Murloc. And Soul of the Murloc makes it difficult for Jarla to clear the board.
Soul of the Murloc is the only 2-mana spell in this Evolved Shaman deck, so it will be a guaranteed draw step from him here. This is why Wild Pyromancer from the Paladin side is the single most crucial card, I would say. I haven't seen enough data yet to verify it, but I imagine it would be the highest win rate card on the Paladin side in this matchup, perhaps alongside Crystology, because it is so important to not let Soul of the Murloc be a massive threat.
This is clever too by hunterace.
Cult Master.
Yeah, Cult Master making Pyro ordering very important. Jarla does pick up the Pyromancer. Pyromancer quality doesn't deal with this board. And because of the Soul of Murloc, 5 Murlocs are going to be replayed with just a simple swipe, or sweep rather. Which means that hunterace would be on a Lightning Bolt victory, potentially.
Let me think.
So Jarla has a very clear signal now that there is not a Bloodlust on the other side.
Yes.
So if Jarla subdues this in Nixia, that leaves hunterace with 10 power left on the board, but Lightning Bolt has to be on the forefront of Jarla's mind as well.
Right, he did see one mana spell be drawn, excuse me.
Yes.
Like to play with fire?
Which there are 2 Lightning Bolts, 2 Voltaic Burst, and 2 Evolve. So it's not guaranteed hunterace has the Lightning Bolt, but it is an incredibly real possibility.
Spell damage totem for the win here. Hunterace missing 1 damage. The 6 damage from the Lightning Bolts, the 5 on power on board. Does not get it. So Equality and Shrinkway were used. In hunterace's mind, potentially just the Consecration is all that really threatens. And Mogu Flesh Shaper might help chew through that.
Mortals are so squishy.
The window does feel like it's closing here, as that second Pyromancer is a crucial draw. Jarla has the option to remove all of the power off hunterace's board if he so chooses by combining the Wild Pyromancer with the Subdue.
I'm almost willing to say that Jarla has to take a risk and play Holy Wrath onto the 3/4 instead. I think he needs to draw deeper in his deck and discount his Shrivala, which is at 10 right now. So Subdue is okay, instead it floats too much mana afterwards. Another option is to Prismatic Lens, but I don't know if I like that either, given that there are some cheap stuff, but you don't want to risk having things that, like you need your Consecration specifically in that scenario, and there's no guarantee that you'll get it just because of Crystology and Elven Archer.
The Holy Wrath would be a significant risk. I don't have the exact numbers, but Jarla has yet to draw 2 Crystologies, an Elven Archer. I believe Blood Mage Thalnos is still in there. There are a lot of whiffs.
There's a lot of whiffs. So he does end up going for the Subdue. By not killing the Taunt Totem, by the way, hunterace now has a 1 in 3 chance to end this game. Does not get it. Voltaic Burst does end up answering the Pyromancer, which with hunterace, each time he totems and doesn't die, or these totems rather don't die, hunterace gets closer to potentially guaranteeing a victory.
I'm sure Jarla is accounting for one lightning bolt. The second one, though, is a variable he may not play around, take a calculated risk.
Right.
Think that he is safe.
Well, the thing about the 1/1 Searing Totem, too, is that that also is threatening a lethal. Let's say Jarla just plays Emperor Thorsand next turn.
I wonder.
That would surprise me. Crucially, I know you might not be able to see it at home. It is a little bit cut off, but the Jarla is down to 8 mana.
Oh my goodness! Khadgar summons 2 extra Voltaic Bursts. Thunderhead making its way off the Evolve. It's a big deal. Jarla now needs Consecration, exactly, to clear this board. And he needs everything to die. He does think, now that with the Voltaic Burst being used from hand, I think he pretty much has pegged Lightning Bolt to be an extremely high chance. It's very unlikely it's just the second Voltaic Burst. Also, hunterace has been holding 2 cards now, with pretty much all mana being floated outside that 1 mana expenditure. So in his mind, it might even be safe to assume that there's a second Lightning Bolt, based off the way hunterace is toteming and evaluating his plays after.
It wouldn't be surprising at all if a player of Jarla's caliber put hunterace on that read at this point. But again, this Jarla on the far left side of Jarla's hand is 8 mana, which means Jarla is free to cast spells as he pleases this turn and still have the mana to play Jarla.
Timeout here, pretty big. I don't know if we want to play Jarla, and I think that the timeout, what it does is gives you the turn to play Jarla the following turn. I'd be very afraid of losing Jarla just to what my opponent has.
You can very much still win this matchup, I want to point out, without Jarla. You can exhaust the Shaman of its resources and then Baleful Banker your Zephyrus later on in the game to close out the game with Tyrians. So Jarla is not an essential resource necessarily.
Hunterace sees the timeout. With 11 cards remaining, though, that's a pretty good comfort zone.
Yes.
But it's like you said, Jarla can just be enough to win by itself. Sometimes you have Zephyrus, like you mentioned. A lot of different possibilities. Khadgar will only summon 1 totem, but good on Jarla to snipe the Searing Totem, recognizing what hunterace is fishing for. He gets the spell damage totem, but a turn too late. hunterace obviously would have loved to have that earlier. And I think now is contemplating if he wants to even use Goblin Lackey in this position to effectively all-in again and force Jarla into a tough spot.
I wonder. There is little time.
2 Pyromancers have been used, as well as Elven Archer, so unlikely this 1 damage onto this Wrath of Air Totem is going to bite him. Zephyrus comes to the hand for Jarla, but it's not active.
Not yet. Jarla is now very free to develop this Jarla this turn and still have the luxury of bankering it back into his hand. So I do expect to see it come down this turn as just an incredible tempo tool.
Let me think.
Consecration.
Wow.
But Consecration, again, puts himself in a situation where 25% of the time he might just die. Versus Jarla. Jarla Consecration is a full board clear, but you don't get to shuffle it in with the Baleful Banker.
Right.
If you Jarla and then Baleful Banker, and that's it. You're leaving up 4 power and you're at 14. With Bloodlust being a possibility to kill you.
Let's move quickly.
And hunterace has 2 cards in the hand that you haven't used in a long time. Consecration it is.
Jarla risks the 25%.
Lickum is also lethal. Underbelly Angler. Right after you use the Sludge Slurper as well.
Misses again on hunterace's side, and you can see Jarla rocking back in his chair. I get the impression he has a very clear read on hunterace's hand range.
Right, and in hunterace's mind, it's almost like if you hero power, you almost kind of just give your opponent a chance to do something, because Jarla needs a target to rush. And I think at this point, I think it's too late now. You know, hunterace just fizzled out. Saying it all weekend long, A-Bar, but I am just not a fan of this Underbelly Angler.
Would you prefer to maybe have one of those Khadgars in your deck because of the synergy with the Thunderheads and Voltaic Burst?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I'll even take like a Haunting Visions type scenario, so that way I can like discover a spell and then maybe have Spear of the Frog continue to trigger, right? So the Murloc draws the Haunted Visions. Just have a way to chain it. I'll even take a Storm Chaser to fetch out Bloodlust. Ooh. I think I would take any of those or all of those over the Underbelly Angler. But again, I understand why we have that. We have that card so that way we can have a proactive play on 2. So that we have other options. But Bloodlust, double Lightning Bolt is 3 plus maximum of 10 on top of the 1. So it'd be... Whoa, actually, it would be exactly lethal, wouldn't it?
I believe 12 is max damage here. If we roll the spell damage totem, we have 3 ways to deal 4 damage.
6. And he doesn't even get it.
Hunterace has the option to double Lightning Bolt the Jarla to prevent additional life gain. But boy, does that look bleak.
I wonder. You win this.
That's going to do it. Hunterace concedes. Jarla barely survives. By the hair of his chinny chin chin. Jarla's going to take a brief break here, but Hunterace back to the drawing board. Some intense games back and forth, but after 2 of them, we're tied at 1 game apiece. That edge that was gained by playing this matchup from the Paladin side on Jarla versus the Shaman was something that Hunterace was looking to get that 2-0 victory, but now we turn into a Shaman Priest setup here from both these players.
And I think a Shaman Priest setup favors Hunterace. I think that between the dynamic between those 4 decks, I think overall the win percentages across the board and the way that those decks could line up is in favor of the more aggressive Shaman. But I'm happy to see that game pan out the way it did for selfish reasons, because I think that it very effectively illustrated why I both think that the Questless Evolved Shaman is stronger in the matchup against Paladin than the Quest Shaman, and why I also still think it is slightly Paladin favored. There's a very clear window of opportunity there where Hunterace could have rolled a different totem or could have picked up a different card off the top of his deck, and he had lethal setups, and he was prepared to end the game in his favor, but ultimately he was just statistically unlikely for those things to come together from that position, and I think on average the Paladin gets there as it did in that game.
Well, I mean, yeah, given that there were 3 instances, at least from what I can recall, where Hunterace was on a totem to victory, that's pretty good odds, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, chances are, I think he's more likely than not to roll spell damage totem by the end of that. But, you know, sometimes it happens, and Hunterace also did a really good job maximizing his chances. Particularly, I was a big fan of the Spear of the Frog Zap Evolve play. I thought that was really clever. Helped get things like Soul of the Murloc, helped thin the deck just a little bit so that way he can draw Bloodlust if you end up getting fortunate there. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and I think Hunterace still is showing really good technical play. I really don't disagree with any of his decisions, ultimately. The only thing I guess I can disagree with is whether or not he should put certain cards in his deck before the tournament begins. And even then, I totally see the value of it. Let's go to game number 3 momentarily here, as now we might see that Priest Mirror that we're kind of alluding to. I feel like we're almost destined to see a Priest Mirror every single series today.
So the way these 4 remaining decks line up, just to further add some emphasis to my earlier point, is that the Evolved Shaman is marginally favored. The Quest Evolved Shaman is marginally favored against the Questless Evolved Shaman. However, the Questless Evolved Shaman is marginally favored against the Priest. So it's an interesting dynamic between those 3 decks where both players are trying to get an edge, queuing the right deck into the right other deck. Looks like we will see the Quest Shaman from Jarla against the Priest from Hunterace. So this dynamic ended in favor of Hunterace for this particular game.
Shall bring victory.
All right, pretty much full mulligans on both sides. Oh my goodness. Wow. What a curve for Jarla. Corrupt the Waters, Quest to Explore, Desert Hare Evolve.
hunterace is probably sitting here thinking, I'm on the play, I got the Northshire Cleric on 1, I am happy with where I'm seated. But yeah, Jarla got the nuts. That's about the perfect 4 cards you want in your opening hand.
Right, the only thing that he has to bite the bullet on is whether or not he wants to do anything on turn 2 and potentially make his opponent's job easier. And also, Jarla evolving doesn't necessarily deal with the Northshire Cleric on board.
It doesn't, but it opens up a lot of possibilities to do so, and I do like developing the Questing Explorer here from Jarla, even though it gives hunterace the ability to draw 1 additional card this turn if he so chooses, just with his hero power. Jarla ultimately needs to begin fighting for this board eventually, and if hunterace is taking cards at the expense of tempo, it is a trade that he is happy to allow hunterace to make, as tempo is king in this matchup.
hunterace debating if he wants to go for this Acolyte play versus drawing first. He might think he has all the time in the world and luxury to try to answer his opponent's board, but the Desert Hare, Desert Hare combo is pretty deadly. And Jarla, if he goes to this Desert Hare Evolve, which I think hunterace is hoping against, but oh my goodness, a second Evolve.
So you're always Desert Hare coin evolving here as Jarla. What he's debating is whether or not he bumps this Cleric. He opts to do so.
He's ready for it.
hunterace visibly frustrated.
Not the best, though. Oh, wow. This extra arms might end up becoming a really big factor here. Funny enough, by the way, this Untamed Beastmaster, there are beasts in the deck for Jarla. There's Life Drinkers, there's Evil Cable Rats.
There's another Desert Hare.
Another another Desert Hare. So this extra arms allows hunterace to pick up 2 minions on the board. Oh, wow. Draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced extra arms is where we want to go here. I think I'd like to see him start with the circle and then reevaluate his options, as he is going to do. Draw 3 cards for 0 mana, and then figure out what our hand looks like and what we can make of it.
Guess the only thing was I wanted to restrict the number of minions on board, but hunterace not afraid of that.
Quickly.
And Northshire Cleric, like I said, has already done its job. Drawing a bunch of cards. Knows that the Cleric seems to be doomed right now.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Big board for Jarla to trade into, but if he wants to evolve again... Oh.
There we have it.
The Desert Hare gets buffed.
Dan, it's not even that good to evolve it if it's a 3/3.
I know, but it's still a lot. You know,
Yeah.
you still have the 3/4, the 3/2, the 2/5 all evolving as well. The only thing is that there's an 8/8 Northshire Cleric on the other side of the board. That's still really scary.
And crucially, the other 2 Desert Hares that come off of this initial copy are still 1/1s. Plenty of merit to evolving them. The 8/8 Northshire Cleric is scary, but 1 Divine Spirit has already been invested into it, so there is somewhat of a max range of damage that you can play around. From hunterace's side, he can only make this Cleric so big. So if I'm Jarla, I consider isolating it here and trying to set up counter lethals.
hunterace kind of laughing because you don't really expect the Desert Hare to be buffed. It's decision-making time. And I think he is going to end up taking this easy trade and evolving for maximum stats.
He does decide to isolate the Cleric. That's a lot of stealth.
That's a lot of stealth. Spear of the Shark is the most interesting thing to me, given that it's almost as if his quest is already completed. Harbinger Celestia, though, not exactly a good outcome. But the Spear of the Shark is pretty nutty. hunterace can't even believe that the Spear of the Shark's coming out here and just thinking the double Desert Hare and the double Evolve. We've seen that just win games.
Yeah, I like the quest list Shaman more than the quest Shaman in this matchup because of the other cards that are included in both decks. But both decks running the Desert Hare Evolve package now, that is very much plan A, regardless of which Shaman archetype you go with. That is the nuts in this matchup, either way. As it is in many matchups.
Move quickly.
Probably has to be mindful of whatever minion he plays. So Psychopop is what's going to the Celestia will transform into.
In the light's name.
In this case, he's going for the Light Warden first. He's also incidentally playing into Mind Control tech.
Spirit of the Shark has the exact same effect, actually, as your quest does in the Shaman deck.
TC-130 until dislocated.
Okay, that's a good outcome for hunterace. Jarla has the ability to even clear off a lot of the board, but I guess with the revive on the Acolyted Pain, hunterace's hand gets refilled. I do believe that there's a board clear available to Jarla simply through the Sandstorm Elemental. So he would trade the 4-2 and the 3-4 into the 8-8, the 4-3 into the 1-3 Acolyted Pain, and the 1-2 Light Warden would bump into the other Light Warden. Everything should be at 1 health.
Well, remember that the Sandstorm Elemental will do 2 damage on its own.
Oh, you're right. Because of the
Spirit of the Shark.
Although... So this is something that I was actually thinking about, was Acolyte drawing 2 cards. Because of the way he sequenced that, Acolyte can be overkilled and draw an additional card. And now, hunterace has 3 spells. Probably wants to top C first.
Turn his own Wild Pyromancer into a 3-5 here.
Yeah. Silencing just any minion, playing Light Warden for tempo. hunterace has swung the board. Shaman's out of cards with no activator for the Weaponized Wasp to gain back the tempo. Yeah. Wow, I wonder if that extra card draw ends up being a big factor. Probably not in this case, but hunterace is 1 card deeper now, which makes it easier for him to expend a little bit more of his resources. Jarla picks up cards just a little bit too late. He needs Evil Totem to get him the proper lackey to fight back on board, but if he plays Evil Totem, he's not finishing his quest. So playing Life Drinker in this position also is poor, given that there's a Light Warden on board.
Yeah, the Life Drinker healing Jarla actually benefits hunterace as well here, as that will increase the Light Warden up to a 3-2 and allow him to trade it directly into the Life Drinker if he so chooses.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize how important it was that hunterace had that Pyromancer and spells, given that Jarla softened up his board, right? So hunterace, for example, his Northside Cleric targeted the 3-6 instead of a 4-2 or anything else that was stronger on the board. hunterace was foreseeing an ability to clear the board with a bunch of spells. It's paying off huge. Wild Pyromancer with Nephroset Ritualist and a bunch of other combinations. There's also a High Priest Amet opportunity here for hunterace. Also could just simply pull the trigger on Bwansambi and keep it simple. Quest isn't completed, but he knows that there's a lackey in hand. In the worst case scenario of extending, he could lackey Hero Power Mind Control tech.
You can simply trade over the relevant of the 2 totems here if you're hunterace. So I like making the most proactive turn that I can here, trying to close this game as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that involves healing or just pushing with the Light Warden, right?
Pushing the 1 with the Light Warden, possibly, and developing the Bwansam D. Alternatively,
You could just like try and buff with the Neverset Ritualist. Go from there.
I've got more left in me.
looks like he is going to favor that wide board of medium-sized stats. Bog Slosher. Not what you're looking for here.
Nope. And there's too much stats to want to pick apart here for Jarla. So the Witchy Lackey will enable the quest. However, the quest still only lets you weaponize Wasp twice, and you're going to target what?
What to do?
The Light Warden?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you want to kill the biggest damage threat, and that's the Light Warden at this point.
So at that point, there's no real reason in even hitting your quest button if the Light Warden is your desired target, so you could Wasp the Light Warden and then Bog Slosher it back in your hand and hope to find a Cable Rat.
Or Sludge Slurper.
Sludge Slurper.
I think Jarla does have to go with the buying time plan.
Every draw step matters here, though, for Jarla. This game goes too much longer, will exponentially turn back in his favor due to this Shaman quest being unlocked. If he can buy a couple more turns with perhaps the help of an additional mind control tech, Sandstorm Elemental could come in handy. Jarla does run 2 copies of the mind control tech. We saw a handful of players actually shaving 1 mind control tech as part of the way that they made room for the Desert Hair Evolved package. Jarla very much still valuing those, which could potentially save him here in this game.
Hunterace has the Bwansam or the High Priest of Met to lead things off this turn. Also could just consider drawing a card with Northshire Cleric to keep his mana open. With Jarla having the turn before Shutterwalk, I think I want to find a way to try and pincer for the win. Because Shutterwalk would be a way for Jarla to come back. So I think this is the turn to play Amet or Bwansam.
I see a dark future.
Is someone injured?
Hunterace would like to close this game quickly. 1 Divine Spirit is gone. So to some extent, Hunterace has to fight fair, I will say, although that is a term that just feels disingenuous when we're talking about priests in general.
Right. I think he wants to bounce or kill off the weaponized Wasp to stop a bounce potentially from hurting him. He knows that a lackey bounce was in the hand. And with this, Jarla needs something huge, finds the Sludge Slurper. It's kind of like what we're talking about. But even if Jarla kept the Wasp in hand, he wouldn't be that far ahead on the board. Cobalt Lackey.
So Cobalt Lackey could chip into the High Priest Amet.
He's just softening up everything. He's not actually killing anything off the board.
Right, if he softens things up enough,
I wonder.
I'm trying to come up with a way that he finds an Ethereal Lackey and perhaps Earthquake gets him out of this spot. Opening up other options besides just the mind control tech as ways to fight back on the board.
Yep. There is also like Witchy Lackey opportunities to maybe evolve something, or Faceless Lackey has the ability to summon 2 drops that could have impact.
What to do? There is little time. It's hot.
Going to start with the Faceless, hoping for something like a Direwolf Alpha here, maybe.
I don't think Jarla's seeing it.
Hunterace does have lethal here. Okay, Life Drinker now played. Has Jarla's life total enough that the more arms in Hunterace's hand isn't an immediate lethal setup.
Hunterace looking for some way to end this game. Inner Fire, topsy-turvy. There it is.
Should do it.
10, 12 plus 7 is 19, plus the more arms is 21. That should do it.
Yes. As long as Wild Pyromancer attacks first, there we go. So that when the Pyromancer triggers with the cast of an additional spell, it will die. As long as hunterace still got that 3 damage in, he had a nice lethal setup here. Proper sequencing, as you might expect from the world champion.
That's gonna do it. hunterace takes game 3. 1 game away from once again making a top 4 berth. This is something that happened in Season 1. hunterace, the only player from Europe to make 2 playoffs back-to-back. Last season, it was, well, Fino, Orange, and Psycho. 3 players who are bottom of their divisions this season, 2 of them being relegated. So hunterace, the only constant force, it seems like, in Europe. Death Taxes and hunterace topping Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Yeah, it's very much been the reverse of the way that hunterace ended Season 1. He went on an incredible win streak, made it to the playoffs as the top seed, and then sort of fell apart once he got to the playoffs. Now we have hunterace ending the regular season of Season 2 on actually a pretty brutal losing streak, maybe the worst that we've seen out of hunterace over the last couple of years, and able to turn it around this time when it matters most here in the playoffs.
Right. I mean, he did only lose 1 time in the playoffs last season, so
Right.
like, and it's a best of 3, and it was 2-1. So I do think saying falling apart is a little bit harsh, given that he eventually did lose a single best of 3.
He didn't win, Dan. That's what I expect out of hunterace.
Yeah.
Winning.
You're right. And, you know, Jarla, in the meantime, really picked it up for Season 2 and trying to get his victories rolling. But not winning that game, I think, does hurt, because now Jarla has to beat the Shaman deck 2 more times. And according to Abar, this is the meta breaker deck. So if this deck loses 3 times, Abar, will you reconsider?
You know, if it loses enough times, I'm going to have to, Dan. But I still have very much faith in this deck. I think that hunterace has to win over Jarla's Priest with this deck. That is a favorable matchup for the Shaman as far as I'm concerned. And then the other deck remaining for Jarla is the Quest Shaman, which I would consider to be marginally unfavored for the Token Shaman. But there's still very much game in that matchup. It wouldn't come as too big of a surprise to me to see the Token Shaman still finish things off here. It's like hunterace is going to start, or Jarla rather, is going to start with his Shaman as well. The more favorable of his 2 remaining matchups. We see this often from players. They want to attempt to take it the distance.
Interesting opening hands. hunterace has the Voltaic Burst. Voltaic Burst, pretty good as a starting thing, given that you don't have many 1-drops in the deck. But it does hamstring the rest of his mana. And then on Jarla's side is that he had Evil Totem, so if you coin Evil Totem, he's playing directly into the Voltaic Burst. It was something that I was considering, right? Like, do you ever keep Voltaic Burst in your opening hand going on the play?
No. I will give a resounding no to that one. The cards you're looking for in this matchup from the Token Shaman side are the Evolve, the Mogu Flesh Shaper, the Desert Hare, the Lickum is solid. There are a handful of cards, Spirit of the Frog as well, that you do actively seek as the Token Shaman on this side. Voltaic Burst is actually pretty low on the list.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. hunterace debating if he wants to Totem. Totem is an anticipation of potentially this Desert Hare Evolve being crazy good. And then you also factor in the Mogu Flesh Shaper.
This still leaves hunterace the option to Totem again. On his following turn, he will be overloaded for 1 mana crystal or develop the Lickum, depending on how proactively Jarla chooses to play his turn 2. But conventional wisdom would suggest Jarla's going to fit in the quest here, as he does.
So if hunterace plays another minion and Jarla plays 1 more, Mogu Flesh Shaper will be down to 4, which means Desert Hare and Mogu Flesh Shaper can't come down the same turn as Evolve. So if Jarla plays 2 minions, Mogu Flesh Shaper becomes entirely free at that point, and Jarla could be looking at a very quick end of the game. So crucially here for Jarla is for him to not play 2 minions.
And frankly,
Oh boy.
yeah, I do not fault Jarla for this whatsoever.
Oh boy. Oh man. Oh, that is a lot of statistics about to hit the field here.
Now we're talking,
Okay,
man.
here's the thing. I think hunterace should trade this Searing Totem. Because I am also deathly afraid of a Doomsayer coming in here.
Interesting. I thought you were going to tell me that you think he should trade the Searing Totem because you want to consolidate your own board state, because the way that Jarla gets back into the game from this point is a counter Mogu Flesh Shaper turn, and I was prepared to agree with you on that. The Doomsayer, I guess, is a secondary consideration.
Okay, fair enough. I've seen it happen. It happened to me a few days ago, and I was super upset. And it was exactly the same scenario of having only one 2-drop. But nah, it's a Blood Mage Thanos. This is also incidentally very good. But how does I wouldn't say that the Mogu Flesh Shaper right back would be enough to turn the tides here.
I'm not saying it would be enough. I'm saying that how else is I mean, it would have to be probably multiple Mogu Flesh Shapers. You could potentially see from Jarla this turn his own Desert Hare, Flesh Shaper, value trade, evolve. Right? Like, that is a very real thing that happens in this matchup. And
That's
so
fair.
you can't just feel like you won the game just because you had the nuts on your own turn 4. Your opponent might do the exact same thing back to you, and if you evolve first, the counter Mogu Flesh Shapers actually get better value trades from the opposing side if they do the same turn right back to you. So the game is very much not over from the Token Shaman side once you get this far.
Sort of. I mean, assuming hunterace has minions you can value trade into.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that does depend on a couple of factors, and also Jarla is not the one running Bloodlust. So I generally like being the one presenting the threats in this matchup, so I feel like hunterace, he's in a good spot, and he even has the Blood Mage Thanos to draw an extra card.
You like my invention?
Yeah, I am purely speaking in hypotheticals of game states that we currently do not live in, Dan.
Sandstorm Elemental ends up being a nice pickup, incidentally. All right, so 14 damage on the board, 17 through the Lickum. Sludge Slurper can also provide hunterace additional ammo. Perhaps a Witchy Lackey again? Perhaps an Ethereal Lackey? Honestly, even a Titanic Lackey isn't that bad here to stop it from getting hit into a Mogu Flesh Shaper, as you were talking about. You can, for example, taunt up. Well, actually, I think something to consider is whether or not you are playing around Mind Control tech at all. So if you do, Titanic Lackey would go on, say, the Sludge Slurper, right?
Yeah, I feel I'm happy to make my board as wide as possible here, because if Jarla Mind Control techs prior to quest completion, that is almost a win.
Well, it's a 2-turn lethal setup either way.
Yes.
I think I like this. Definitely think Lickum goes face. Alright, he's pressing in for the victory. Cobalt, Bog Slosher, not enough. Sorry, Wasp, rather. Cobalt Wasp, not enough here. And the Mogu Flesh Shaper being a little bit too expensive. Is there anything Jarla can do with the Sludge Slurper in this spot?
So Sludge Slurper finds Ethereal Lackey.
Okay, Ethereal Lackey. So you can play Goblin Lackey, and then Kobold Lackey, and then Mogu Flesh Shaper.
Yeah, I was trying to think of if we could toss a Beaker Lightning in the mix off of Ethereal Lackey, but we didn't even get that far. It's going to be Goblin Lackey instead.
I mean, it is, you are live on the board, right? If you Goblin Lackey, and you Flesh Shaper, and you Kobold, you are going to be alive just barely. You're going going to be able to trade this 4-3.
Mortals are so squishy.
And your opponent, if they're overloaded, has 10 damage. It's just that if hunterace draws a single form of damage. Well, Sea Giants have Rush, too. Also funny to note that hunterace does also get Rush off the Splitting Hulk.
Sure does.
The Splitting Fester route, excuse me. It's kind of interesting.
Sea Giant being an 8/8 rush is an effective budget mulch muncher.
Choosing not to hero power with it, because he doesn't need to. Also, because he's playing around mind control tech still.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing Jarla can really do. Too much stats.
Well played.
And that's going to wrap it up. Single elimination. hunterace with a spot in the Grand Finals has improved his Season 1 Grandmasters performance. How does he do it? A 3rd place finish, now a guaranteed 2nd place finish, and the elusive back-to-back World Championship Club / Global Finals Club is now open, or rather still open for hunterace. What an incredible player this guy is.
Yeah, and frankly, he has got to make it there to make sure that he doesn't get his throne retaken by Tom60229, who already secured his spot from the Asia-Pacific region. So pressure's on for hunterace. He's one away to get back to that world stage.
That's right. It sets the stage for a hunterace versus KC match, which I'm sure Sottle having a hard time keeping in his pants right now. 2 of the players that he loves fawning over and sings nonstop praises with very flowery British language. It's all happening next with A-Bar. I'm on a break, so don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to have the grand finale of Europe's Grandmaster Season 2. Stay tuned.